Voila. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, my name is Max Garza III. For those of you just joining us, I'm calling in tonight out of North America. For many of you, it's evening, afternoon, and morning because we have some people joining us from around the world today, and we thank you very much for spending some quality time with us today. Ultimately, guys, today what you're going to learn more about is the Ethereum blockchain, and basically you're going to get an overview on what Ethereum is. Now, one of the main reasons we're doing this tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is because obviously as you have learned more about how we're on Xpress moving over to the Ethereum blockchain, many of you have questions, right? Many of you are trying to figure out what the smart contract technology is and why people are so excited. What you have to remember, guys, is in 2008 when Lehman Brothers was going bankrupt, when we were having a banking crisis, when we were having a housing crisis, people were getting sick and tired of centralized banking institutions, right? So obviously in 2009, a white paper came out, obviously talking about a digital currency called Bitcoin and blockchain technology. And what happened, guys, was a revolution because people from around the world are just sick and tired of being taken advantage of by centralized banks and governments. And that's ultimately in play even today, guys. As an example, in India, their prime minister, his name is Modi, he literally told all of India, hey, look, we're going to take the 500 rupee and 1,000 rupee notes, and if you don't spend them in the next 4 hours, they're going to be worthless. So you want to talk about removing about 2.5 to 5% of the nation's GDP in 4 hours. That's basically what Modi did. Now, in China, you had 1 million Chinese moved over to Bitcoin because of the devaluation of the yuan. So, guys, this is occurring all around the world. I read a case about Argentina, how they had 1,200% inflation on their currency. So this is why so many people pulled their money out of banks because the inflation was eating up, their currency. And a lot of those people in Argentina, Venezuela, the Ukraine, guys, so many countries, so many people in these countries are moving over to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies on blockchain technology. The reason why this is important for people like you and me and our families is because obviously now with the power on Xpress and the XeCoin, we have the very first cryptocurrency coin that's ever been backed by a commodity like clean, green, renewable energy. And for those of you that don't know, guys, Bitcoin is actually a fiat currency, just like the United States dollar. There is nothing that backs Bitcoin. There's no gold, no silver, no notes. Basically, it's just trust, right? Just like the United States dollar. In the 70s, Richard Nixon took the American dollar off the gold standard, basically meaning, hey, we have trust in each other and we have trust in our government, and that's what gives the United States dollar value, right? So the reason why you should be ultra excited about the XeCoin is because imagine the CEO of Exergonics, our parent company, when we were in Anaheim, he basically told everybody, he said, look, guys, no matter what is going on in the global public exchange, every XeCoin will be backed by 10 cents of clean, green, renewable energy, no matter what's going on in the market. So, guys, you got to remember, having stability, right, is very valuable because obviously as time goes on, the valuation will continue to go up and up and up because our coin will be backed by not just renewable energy, but also physical products and services from Exergonics, our parent company, and carbon credits. So thank you very much, guys, for being visionaries. All of you on this webinar are awesome. You should congratulate yourselves because it takes visionaries to see trends, and you are in front of a huge trend. But let's get started with our overview of Ethereum. So basically, guys, many of you have this simple question. What is Ethereum? And Ethereum is a world computer, and it might change how we interact, just like the internet did 20 years ago. Like Bitcoin, it is based on a blockchain, but Ethereum is more than just a currency. It's transparent governance for communities, secure communications, authentication, and messaging, secure backbone for e-commerce and the Internet of Things, secure payments, integrated development environment for debugging, development, and deployment of Ethereum applications. Now, it's free software, all released under the general public license. And guys, what you have to remember is the first internet, the first disruption that many of us saw when we were younger, literally that was the internet of information. What is occurring with cryptocurrency and blockchain technology is the internet of money. Because obviously, as long as you have a mobile device around the world, now you can actually buy and sell products and services through your mobile device and cryptocurrency. That's amazing, guys, because you have to think about it. If there's 7.5 billion humans on planet Earth, but only 1.5 billion of them have access to bank accounts or savings accounts, imagine what blockchain technology and cryptocurrency is going to do for those people in developing countries, right? And this is why we're so excited to be partnered with the Power on Xpress. Now, let's talk about an explanation for an absolute non-techie person, right? Because many of us, like if I was trying to explain this to my mother, this is how I would do it. So let's first take a step backwards. How would you explain a computer to a non-technical friend? Let's say that it's a device that performs computations, perhaps. Most non-technical friends probably get that, right? Ethereum is the same, only that instead of being a single computation device that you have physical access to, the computations run and the results are stored on every participating node on the Ethereum network. And a node is a computer, guys, just so you all know. In case of any inconsistency in the results, the nodes on the Ethereum network can come to a consensus on which of the results is the valid one. The computations can also be permissioned such that only designated participants can execute them. So your non-technical friend would then quite rightly ask, why would that be of any use? Now, the answer is that such distributed computation turns out to be rather useful when two or more parties that do not directly mutually trust each other need to come to an agreement on the result of a computation, such as how much funds do I have on my account. Now, traditionally, transactions between such parties require interactions through trusted third parties, right? So as an example, guys, in the past, we would just think about centralized banks. So now let's talk about number two, explanation for someone who has a basic understanding on how web services work. Here we go. All right. For a slightly more tech-savvy friend, we can look at Ethereum as a platform to build web services. At a very high level, it looks as illustrated below, like the right figure, in comparison to the traditional trusted third party. Let's just call it the Acme Corporation, right? Model shown on the left. So guys, when you're looking at a centralized modality versus a decentralized modality, this is what we're talking about. So below the hood, the two models, left is the traditional centralized, right is the Ethereum decentralized. So this is the Ethereum decentralized. Look like this as illustrated below. So with block creation nodes, miners, foundation layer of Ethereum composed of any compute device running the Ethereum full node code. Now, blockchain for simplicity, let's assume that this is the virtual machine formed out of the collection of block creation nodes. Ledger, proof of X, smart contract are the services that the Ethereum virtual machine provides to facilitate the development of end user services. Examples of proof of X services are proof of existence and proof of ownership. Now, user service is one or a combination of Ethereum service instances. Now, all this really means, guys, what you have to remember is in the future, because of the Ethereum smart contract technology, as an example, when Haiti was ravaged by hurricanes, many people that had land deeds that were on actual paper, written on paper, signed on paper, well, when this hurricane ravaged them last year, obviously many of those papers were destroyed, right? So people were trying to figure out who owned what plot of land. There was a lot of confusion, a lot of angry people. The beautiful thing about the Ethereum smart contract blockchain is the fact that now you can put land registrations on the blockchain, right? You can put driver registrations. voting records, medical records, the list goes on and on and on, ladies and gentlemen. That's why so many people are excited. That's why you have Wall Street trying to figure out how to use Ethereum smart contracts, right? You have big banks like Chase Manhattan, Wells Fargo Bank, NA, trying to figure out how to use Ethereum blockchain technology. So now, most notably, observe how, in contrast to the traditional centralized model, Acme Core is no longer at the center of the universe, with all stakeholders dependent and reliant on it as a trust anchor. With the Ethereum approach, Acme Corp is an arbitrary entity, and your interactions with it are governed by the corresponding smart contract running on Ethereum. As an example, guys, let me give you something that I heard on a webinar the other day. They were talking about Las Vegas, right, and how the Super Bowl is coming up. Well, imagine having the ability to have, let's say that you had a friendly wager with a family member, right? Maybe you're an Atlanta Falcons fan. You're amazing because you love the Falcons and they're mighty, right? And maybe your family member is a New England Patriots fan, and we don't hold it against them, right? But it happens. And let's just say that you put a wager with an Ethereum blockchain smart contract. Basically, you could put the money into escrow, right? At the end of the game, depending on who won and what the parameters of the friendly wager were, the money would be deposited in said account of the winner, right? And so you wouldn't have to worry about anything else. You could basically just PayPal it in, boom, results come out. It is instantaneously put into that winner's account, or however you set up the smart contract. It is amazing because literally in the past you would have people that would have to get the money, then pay the money out. So we live in a very digitally connected society. And so when I heard that, I was like, well, wow, that's just one little facet of the smart contract technology. But imagine, guys, in the future, you can have driver registrations on there, right? Like literally, you don't have to worry about having to go into the DMV. It's already on an actual smart contract in a blockchain. That's phenomenal. You save time. It's more efficient. It's cheaper. Not as many fees. So what started as an attempt to rescue investor funds in a high-profile project has resulted in a schism that has effectively split the community on the second largest public blockchain. The split is not only physiological, thanks to the design of public blockchain systems, it is also technical, with competing visions manifesting in two very real blockchains or versions of the project's transaction history. As of this weekend, there are now two groups working on two competing versions of a project called Ethereum, a blockchain-based platform designed to enable decentralized application development. If Bitcoin envisioned how a distributed group of users could create and manage a currency, Ethereum sought to allow a distributed group of users to create and manage a decentralized, uncensorable app store. You can learn more in our latest CoinDesk research report. And guys, literally, I read every single day, but I read about Bitcoin technology, blockchain technology. I mean, you literally have to stay on top because literally, guys, in the past, every 6 months, technology would double, and then all of a sudden it became every 5, every 4, every 3, and now it is at lightning speed. So I recommend that everybody on this webinar, every single day, if you can, read 20 to 45 minutes a day, not just on the technology, but what the applications are, because literally the more you learn, the more you will earn with this technology, because as long as you put some enthusiasm behind it, you got some knowledge, that's what people are going to buy into. So, however, there are now two slightly different versions of this platform available to users. Ethereum, the official version of the blockchain maintained by its original developers, and Ethereum Classic, an alternative blockchain maintained by a wholly new team. So both offer the same technology platforms, and according to developers, they're in agreement on a formal roadmap for steps forward. But the small differences have created two markets, both with a combined value of roughly $1.2 billion. Now, how do we get here? Let's start with the DAO. So long, the most notable Ethereum project, the DAO, short for Distributed Autonomous Organization, raised $150 million in Ether, the cryptocurrency of the Ethereum network, earlier this year. So during a public crowd sale held online, anyone who had Ether could participate. The idea was simple. In theory, investors would send money to the DAO and receive voting tokens. And then those who invested and voted would decide democratically how the DAO should disperse those funds. Just as votes were starting to be held, however, the DAO was hacked, attacked, or otherwise compromised, depending on your point of view. To some in the academic community, the early problems were obvious, and debates about their severity had already begun. But this all came to a halt when an individual or individuals used a valid action in the code to withdraw the funds to another DAO he or she controlled. To the Ethereum platform, the action was valid to the extent it was able to be executed according to contract terms. To others who invested, it was a much more contentious action. Now, skipping ahead, the Ethereum community eventually held a vote with the majority of participants agreeing that they wanted to change Ethereum's code to get the funds back to investors and away from the attacker. Now, enter Ethereum Classic. What happened next is that a small minority disagreed with this choice and then took action. While the majority argued that blockchains can and should be altered if enough people agree, other developers asserted that in order to provide a sound history, a blockchain has to be censorship resistant and free from tampering. That's very important, ladies and gentlemen. So instead of making the switch when Ethereum created an entirely new blockchain, the vocal minority continued to mine the old version of the blockchain. Effectively, Ethereum Classic is a parallel version of the blockchain where funds were never returned to Ether owners who lost funds in the demise of the DAO. Ethereum, by contrast, is a blockchain that has moved those funds to another address. But this seemingly small disagreement had an outsized impact. The Ethereum Foundation responded to the DAO debacle in the worst way possible, reads the Ethereum Classic website, and explains further. We believe in the original vision of Ethereum as a world computer you can't shut down, running irreversible smart contracts. Project organizers followed up with a crypto manifesto outlining the rules that blockchains are supposed to follow in their eyes, including openness and perhaps more vitally, immutability. The idea that once transactions are made, in this case a hack, they shouldn't be reversed. Not all blockchains are created equal, it reads. And by staying on the unchanged version of Ethereum, they're preserving these values. Now, who's involved in Ethereum Classic? The Ethereum Classic team currently has 4 developers, according to its lead organizer, named Arvici. He won't reveal his identity, but theoretically anyone can join, just like Ethereum itself. Ethereum Classic is supported by an open source community. A number of notable developers have also voiced an interest in helping the Ethereum Classic project, including early Ethereum. Now, CEO Charles Hoskinson, who left the team in 2014 over differences. What's important to note, though, is the blockchain is not merely being supported for ideological reasons. A growing number of Ethereum miners have devoted computational power toward the Classic blockchain, seemingly because they see a value in securing its transactions and winning the associated mining rewards. At press time, the hash rate for the network was 544 gigahertz a second, or about 13% of the Ethereum network's hashing power. And arguably impressive figure given that the blockchain has only been around for a matter of days. Now, why is profitability, right? The question of what gives classic ethers, ETC, value is still up for debate. But in short, it has value because people believe in the project. And those interested in supporting it can invest in or speculate on the market now that it's listed on exchanges. So since Ethereum Classic is essentially a clone of the digital currency, Ether holders can now make money by making an account on the Ethereum Classic version of the blockchain and duplicating their balance. Now, as Ethereum Classic is a replica of the original blockchain, except for a few key changes regarding the DAO transaction reversals, everyone who had tokens on Ethereum at the time of the fork now has the same amount of tokens on Ethereum Classic. To traders, this is essentially free money, guys. If you owned $100 of Ether at the time of the fork, when it was worth roughly $12, you'd have about 8 ETH, which means you now have 8 ETC or an extra $16. However, those who held more Ether now have a lot more free money. This has since caused problems for exchanges, as even if they don't want to list classic Ether tokens, they're arguably holding what can be called customer funds anyway, simply by possessing Ether at the time of the split. But major exchanges have picked up the alternative Ethereum coin, so it's now possible to trade ETH for ETC. Now, Poloniex, an Ethereum exchange, was the first. Kraken, Shapeshift, and Bitfinex followed shortly after, meaning most of the exchanges that support Ethereum now support Ethereum Classic. There's also been the opportunity for profiting by switching between currencies, and one startup founder has even wondered if this is a new way to double spend currency, a problem that the Bitcoin blockchain was designed to solve, as it doesn't require a central authority. Now guys, who's impacted? Ethereum token holders on both blockchains could be affected by replay attacks if they don't properly separate their addresses to differentiate them on each blockchain, which looks like a complicated process for each individual user to follow. Since again, much of Ethereum Classic is the same as the old network, most users with a balance on one of them can use it on the other. But this could theoretically result in some funny mistakes, like unintentionally moving funds on one of the other networks. So now Poloniex has decided to automatically take precautions for its users, and Ethereum creator Vitaly Buterin suggested that Ethereum Classic update its code to solve the problem. Now, what does this have to do with Bitcoin? We call Bitcoin the 900-pound gorilla in the room, basically. Speaking of important takeaways, whatever happens with Classic is new insight that might be used in Bitcoin. The debate around expanding Bitcoin's block size, a technical upward bound on the size of transactions that the network can support, might not seem relevant to the split, but it is. One point Bitcoin core developers continued to argue during the long-standing debate was that contentious hard forks are dangerous and can have unexpected consequences, such as splitting a blockchain into two competing blockchains. Now, many in the community, for example, BitPay co-founder and CEO Stephen Pear, think that Ethereum Classic's sudden popularity shows that these were valid concerns. Adding to the debate is that Ethereum's hard fork was immediately branded as a success by many Ethereum developers and others in the Bitcoin industry. For example, Coinbase's CEO Brian Armstrong tweeted that they're not something to be feared that results in multiple coins. But this analysis might have been premature, as he indicated as much in a new blog post. Now, in a weird twist, some Bitcoin developers appear to support Ethereum Classic for this very reason, if also to demonstrate what the potential risk of switching to a new blockchain in order to update the code base without consensus. What does this mean for Ethereum? The attention currently on Ethereum Classic could fizzle out, or it might not. Taking Bitcoin Classic as an example, the Bitcoin Classic subreddit is still active even if it never replaced Bitcoin as its engineers intended. There could be two Ethereums that continue to develop along different paths into the future. For now, one of them has the same functionality that Ethereum is supposed to deliver, mainly smart contracts that help to construct versions of Twitter that are safe from censorship and decentralized autonomous organizations. But it's both cheaper and more of a hassle to use without an ecosystem of developer tools built around it. Now, Ethereum itself is also impacted as some users and miners are staying on the old chain, decreasing the number of total users and the network security. Now that it's happened, though, the Ethereum Classic exits the community has tons of questions. These include whether hard forking the blockchain or rewriting the code to reverse transactions without near unanimous consensus is worth the risk. And if Ethereum developers forked again to solve a similar problem, would it split again? Either way, it's not clear if the rise of Ethereum Classic is a bad thing for the technology. The protest blockchain gave the minority a chance to build their own system, and some people think it's an exciting development. So obviously, guys, as you can tell, this is just a brief overview on what is going on with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. But at the end of the day, what you have to realize is that smart contract technology is literally going to change human culture. Because at the end of the day, there's so many things that have basically, when we talk about third-party mediators, you know, if you're talking about a bank, right? If you're talking about an escrow company, if you're talking about just somebody that's in between a transaction in general, that's what drives up costs, right? So at the end of the day, imagine so many things in your lives in the future, not just being more cost-effective, right? More efficient, more secure, decentralized at a push of a button on your mobile device, or like literally, it's exciting to think all the things that we can do, because at the end of the day, our parent company, Exergonics, when we start looking at solar power purchase agreements, when we start looking at energy storage solutions, instead of needing companies or somebody to validate those contracts, now we can just put it on the Ethereum blockchain with smart contract technology, making it faster, cheaper, more secure, and more money that will be deposited into your account, because obviously you're going to be the one sharing all this information around the world. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Max Garza III. I thank you very much for spending some time with us tonight and finding out a little more about what's going on with Ethereum and why we are so excited to be using their blockchain and smart contract technology, guys. And remember, at the end of the day, guys, many of you have books that have chapters that have been written over the past couple of years of your lives. But what you got to remember, guys, you got to stop reading that last chapter. You got to start reading your new chapter in 2017. You got to go out there. If something has not worked for you, change it. Because the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and over and over. And if you have not had success, the kind of financial success that literally you wake up in the morning and are energized to talk to people about, this is your new chapter, ladies and gentlemen. So you have a wonderful weekend, guys. We will see you Monday afternoon at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time for our European webinar. Hopefully by then, Nigel will have the updated PowerPoint to us. God bless, and we will see you Monday. Good night, guys.